Spain is beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel in its battle against wildfires, Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez said on Tuesday. Deepfakes and AI-generated content will have to be labeled as such from Sunday.
Iran says it would not allow the US to determine when the two countries go to war or make peace following 4 consecutive nights without new exchanges of fire.
A 7.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Kumamoto Prefecture, Japan, causing a shopping complex floor to collapse in Kashima town and leaving people trapped inside.
Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez said on Tuesday that Spain is beginning to see light at the end of the tunnel in its battle against the major wildfires still burning across the country.
Hemos compartido el reconocimiento a todos aquellos trabajadores y trabajadoras que luchan contra el fuego en primera línea en horas muy difíciles, muy críticas, pero que efectivamente, gracias a ellos, estamos cambiando las tornas y, por tanto, podemos empezar a ver el final del túnel en la lucha contra estos incendios con todas las precauciones y, efectivamente, en días y en horas especialmente complejas como las que nos quedan.
Speaking at his traditional press conference before the summer break, Sánchez also lashed at climate denialism, calling it the worst possible fuel for tackling the climate emergency. Sánchez called for extreme caution as Spain faces soaring temperatures and the new heatwave forecast, which is expected to make firefighting more difficult and increase the risk of wildfires across much of the country. Deepfakes and AI-generated content will have to be labelled as such from Sunday, as most of the EU AI Act rules start to apply. The Act requires providers and deployers of AI systems to inform users when they are interacting with an AI, such as a chatbot, or when they are exposed to deepfakes and AI-generated videos. Text aiming to inform the public on general interest issues will also have to be labelled if it was written by AI without human editorial oversight. The goal is to allow users to immediately know whether the content is real or fake, to avoid misinformation, fraud, and to make AI more transparent and trustworthy. Concretely, AI providers will have to add machine-readable marks, such as watermarks, to ensure the detection of manipulated content. The rules only target content created for professional reasons, not individuals using AI for personal use. AI systems have until the 2nd of December to adapt to the new rules. There are exemptions for artistic, creative, satirical and fictional work. Some tech giants such as TikTok and Meta have already started labeling AI-generated content in anticipation of the new rules.
Iran says it would not allow the US to determine when the two countries go to war or make peace, as 4 consecutive nights without new exchanges of fire raised hopes that Qatar and Pakistan-led mediation could revive the collapsed interim agreement. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ismail Bakay said at his weekly press briefing on Monday that, quote, any decision on future talks would be based solely on Iran's national interests and that Tehran would continue defending itself for as long as necessary. Earlier, Bakay acknowledged that Tehran and Washington were still exchanging messages, but said U.S. military actions had destroyed the conditions for meaningful negotiations. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters on Monday that Iran had requested talks through intermediaries and directly, claiming Tehran was willing to negotiate because of military pressure it had faced. Trump, however, warned the U.S. will return to a wide-scale military operation should current talks fail. The Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 1/5 of the world's traded oil and gas passed before Iran effectively closed it following the start of the war on 28 February, remains the central sticking point in any settlement. Iran's position is that it holds sovereign authority over the waterway and may designate approved transit routes, a claim the US, Gulf states, and most of the international community reject under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea.
A 7.1 magnitude earthquake struck off the coast of Kumamoto Prefecture, Japan, on Tuesday afternoon, causing a shopping complex floor to collapse in Kashima town and leaving people trapped inside. The offshore tremor triggered a brief tsunami warning and caused widespread structural damage, killing one person in a house collapsed and sending around 50 people to hospital. In response to the emergency, Prime Minister Sanaya Takaichi established a national task force and advised 150,000 residents across 7 prefectures on the island of Kyushu to seek refuge in shelters. While infrastructure suffered heavy disruption, leaving 48,000 households without electricity and suspending Shinkansen bullet trains, nuclear authorities reported no irregularities at 3 nearby power plants. The strong tremor was felt as far away as Busan, South Korea, in a region heavily affected by major seismic activity 10 years ago. The European Union must accelerate the deployment of renewable energy and heat pumps to secure true energy sovereignty, according to a report by the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. The think tank calculated that scaling up wind, solar, and heat pumps displaced 8.8 billion cubic meters of LNG in 2024, which is equivalent to 2/3 of the EU's imports from Qatar that year. Meeting 5-year targets of 4 million heat pumps, 75 gigawatts of solar, and 22 gigawatts of wind annually could cut EU gas demand by 25% by 2030. However, replacing Russian pipeline gas with US and Qatari LNG merely shifted vulnerability, as EU LNG imports rose 84% between 2021 and 2025 amidst Middle East instability. Reaching targets remain challenging, as clean energy accounted for 26.2% of EU energy consumption in 2025, far below the 42.5% target for 2030. At the same time, analysts warn that accelerating clean energy could trade fossil fuel reliance for supply chain dependence on China, which controls key manufacturing for solar, batteries, and heat pumps as a rising electrostate.
Two-thirds of children across Western Europe were exposed to extreme temperatures in the first half of 2026. That is according to a report by child rights organization Save the Children. This figure is 3 times the figure from the whole of last year. In Germany, the number of children exposed to extreme heat in the first 6 months of this year was larger than the last 5 years combined. And in the UK, 10 million children, which is more than the total for any single year in the past 30 years, have been exposed to extreme heat during this same time frame. Children are particularly vulnerable to the heat as they are undergoing physical development and have lower capacity for body temperature regulation. This puts them at high risk of electrolyte imbalance, fever, respiratory and kidney disease. To reverse the trend, a climate expert at Save the Children urged governments to take urgent climate action and work to reduce emissions.
Due to exceptionally low water levels, the foundations of Budapest Margaret Bridge are now fully exposed. More and more visitors are heading to the sandbank, emerging from the Danube to witness the rare sight, with many stacking the river's pebbles into large stone towers.
Dunán ez a földnyelv, meg az átjáró a Margit híd alatt szokott látszani. Ettől függetlenül persze baj, hogy kevés víz van, de ha már aggódni kell, akkor én a Velencei tóért aggódnék jobban.
Despite the unusual conditions, the situation in the Hungarian capital has not yet reached a critical stage. Further downstream, however, the Danube has fallen to historic lows. Near the southern town of Mohacs, a Second World War shipwreck has even re-emerged from the river. The situation is most severe near the city of Bayer, where parts of the Sugovica branch of the Danube have almost completely dried up, devastating local wildlife. On the worst day, the water depth dropped to just 14 centimeters, half of the previous record low.
Ha megnézzük, hogy mondjuk 100 cm alatt, ami egy eléggé alacsony vízállásnak számít, 100 cm alatt hányszor volt a vízállás ebben a 125 évben, erre 21 darab alkalom van, és az is nagyon jellemző, hogy ebből a 21 alkalomból 14 darab az elmúlt 25 évben volt. Tehát az amit a klímaváltozás okán a tudósok nekünk mindig mondanak, és sejten lehet az beigazolódni látszik, hogy a Dunán is egyre gyakrabban, egyre hosszabb ideig, egyre kisebb vizek várhatóak.
According to experts, in the past, even when rainfall was scarce, meltwater flowing from the Alps helped replenish the river. However, because of global warming, alpine glaciers have retreated dramatically.
A Duna alacsony vízállása itt Baján látszik a legjobban. A Sugovicán lényegében át lehet sétálni. A legnagyobb problémát az jelenti, hogy itt nem lehet megnyitni egy csatornát, mint egy tónál, hanem meg kell várni azt, hogy még több víz érkezzen, és a klímaváltozás kevésbé éreztesse a hatását. Siposogyi Zoltán, Euronews, Baja.
Our T'Challa in that film. I want you guys to give a warm welcome to our new Black Panther, Mr. David Johnson.
I want to say thank you so much. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you to this amazing family that I have the honor and the privilege and the blessing to join. I actually don't want to say too much because I want to let this screen do the talking.